mostly doing research for others. Sometimes when you're really old, you get to do your own research. It's spending a lot of time in the lab and doing all sorts of, chemistry and writing papers and getting grants. I got a little bit tired of that, so I kind of left a little bit. And it's not a failure. We've been saying that in all the single talks we've had in this symposium. Leaving academia, as they say, it's not a failure. It's a perfectly valid alternative. And I have references. If you work in academia, you'll want me to find things that are, proven by some kind of paper that say that if you go to that Nature paper, you can find that leaving academia is actually a very good option and a very good alternative to do with your degree in science. If you don't want to get the paper, I brought it for you. Oops, sorry, I don't know where it was there. Well, maybe it's not there. So if you want to check the paper, you can see that there's a lot of, there you go. There's a lot of good things that come from getting a PhD, but also you get a lot of skills that are transferable to other fields of work, to other fields of chemistry. You get a lot of training in scientific thinking, a lot of training in writing that you can apply in a wide variety of fields. So if you get a PhD in chemistry, think about the other possibilities that opens you. And also, I want to kind of kill the misconception that it's the alternative to academia. It's kind of a myth that the people that leave the lab are actually doing something different. If you go to CNN and check out this article by Natalie from the Younger Chemists Committee in ACS, you can find out that actually among the YCC, which is the Younger Chemists Committee in ACS, only 17% of the people work in bench-related jobs. The rest of the people have left and do something different. So it's actually not the alternative, but it's the most common thing to do. And now to the topic, because I don't want to be beyond the 25 minutes. When you work in the lab, you normally do research, you normally prepare a paper, and you may see that I've left a gap there. What comes after that? Science does not stop at publishing the paper. Of course, it's great news if you get like an Ankevante or JAX or a Nature paper, but you should tell people about it. You should get people to know about your paper, get people to know about your research, and there's plenty of ways of doing that. And I'm just going to share some ideas that I've been grabbing from here and there on how to communicate your research in kind of a nice, innovative way. You can take any of the ideas and make them your own. You can do other things. You can even not listen to me and do other things and don't do any outreach. But I think it's a good thing that you talk about your paper after you publish it. It's nothing new. Scientific outreach is very, very old. Here's Michael Faraday giving one of his prestigious Christmas lectures in London. It's from the 19th century. People have been doing science outreach and science communication for a while, and it's not new. But I think it's very important to keep doing it like Faraday did it in the 19th century. Why? Because if you get covered in the news, more people read your paper. It's not only that you get more citations, because you probably don't care, although this is something that counts for ERC grants or Marie Curie grants, but beyond citations and the number, it's actually good that more people are actually reading your paper and more people are aware of what you do. So that's really important to get covered in the news. Okay, so I think the slide from before went somewhere before. So if you check out the first paper, it's actually some paper that proves this. And it's very weird because they do a blind study, which is not easy to do in this case. But they were checking the New York Times and papers from the New England Journal of Medicine. And they discovered that whenever the papers get mentioned in the New York Times, they get up to 70% more citations than the papers that don't get covered. And they did a blind study because there was a strike for the New York Times that year. And so they could say, it's not that people and journalists are picking the best papers, but even when journalists were not working, those papers that weren't covered didn't get any raise in the citation. So it's not that journals pick the best papers, but also that when they cover them in the New York Times, more people are going to read them, more people are going to know about it. Okay, but what do we do now? What do we do beyond press? Because press is kind of last century, when millennials, we need to do something new that is not going to the newspapers. How do we reach the community today beyond, getting into a magazine or getting into a newspaper? Of course, we've got social media. It's a pleasure for me to see Rachel here, who is one of the main influencers in science social media today. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have LinkedIn. I see younger people here, so maybe there's Instagram, TikTok, I don't know, there's a bunch of places where people can share stories. And that's the most important thing. Share the story about your paper and share it with the people you care about. The same way that newspapers will increase your citations and get you more notice, tweets and social media will get your paper more notice. There's research on that proves that if your paper is on Twitter and people read about your paper, you're gonna get cited more often. And also, if you are the people that care about how big your H index is, it also increases your H index. So if you want to go to an ERC committee and say, hey, this is how many times my research has been cited, tweet about it, Facebook about it, LinkedIn about it, tell people about it. And this is a neuroscientist from Canada, I believe, who says it's very low investment and very high reward. Because emails, how many times you spend on emails every day? Probably like 2 hours, 3 hours at least. And what you get from that is almost nothing. On Twitter and social media, you can spend 10, 15 minutes and get a much higher reward for that time. It's not that I'm making this up. Again, more references. If you go to Nature, this was published 2 years ago, some Chinese universities are considering the coverage in social media, in newspapers, as a part of their way to evaluate new professors and new people to get positions in academia. And of course, we're in Paris, which is the middle of Europe. If you apply to any of the H2020 grants, there's a specific place where it says you must promote the action and its results by providing targeted information to multiple audiences. And we had a fantastic talk by Claudia yesterday on Marie Curie actions, and she made a point that you need to disseminate, you need to talk about your research in order to get one of the Marie Curie actions fellowships. So how you do it? Okay, try to be as creative as you can, and again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Every paper, every kind of research, everything you do in the lab tells a story. You need to find a story that matters, actually, but every paper will tell a nice story if you find a way to tell it. So I'm just going to share a couple of ways that I find interesting to share chemistry specifically online. There's of course the way of doing press releases that will get covered by the journals. We talked about that already. This is a very good example of a dear friend of mine that is not looking at the screen right now, but he may. So this is a paper that they just published on PNAS, and we sent a couple of emails and it got covered by the Times. And I don't know if you've gotten more citations to the paper already because of this, but I know that, for example, the French press wasn't paying any attention to this particular paper, and after it got covered in the Times, everyone was like, oh, this piece of research has to be interesting, let's talk about it. So you can get covered by press, you can email your papers to editors. We're gonna have a talk by Lauren from CNN later. Email your paper to them, tell them why it's interesting, and maybe you get it covered. And I mean, the New York Times sounds like very far-fetched, but again, the email addresses are public. Just email them your paper, tell them why it's important, and they may actually cover it. You can do it through art. I think the people at Nature Chemistry do a pretty good job about it. They design very beautiful covers, and I think chemistry and art kind of go together. If you think about it, the history of paint is heavily related with chemistry, and there's very nice ways to do art-related chemistry, and you can communicate your research through paintings, for example. There's this magazine in Spain that I love. They do illustrations that go along with the stories. So instead of talking about hard science, we just give the illustrators a story that is kind of a, a real story, like so it's not the science there, and they imagine what the illustration could be, and they make a wonderful illustration that goes with it. This magazine is also very interested in promoting diversity in science, so we just did a number about women in science, and last year they published a new number on LGBT people in science, which is very interesting to promote diversity in the sciences. Again, pictures. How many around you? Maybe you have seen it because I used that before. But how many have you seen this tweet? It's a wonderful way to promote chemistry. You explain TLCs, kind of, and you show a nice picture for Valentine's because it's a little heart in a TLC. You can use poetry. I saw this on Twitter, I don't know, like maybe 3 weeks back. And this guy, if you read it, it starts with an A. He started doing little tweet poems with different molecules, A, B, C, following the alphabet. And he even drew the structure. I mean, I think it's pretty creative to just find a way to tell things about chemistry just with a poem. There's emojis, come on. I mean, how many of you text anymore? Nobody does, we all send emojis. So, I just found out there's a teddy bear emoji. I just found out yesterday. I don't know why. But yeah, there's a teddy bear emoji apparently. But you can communicate chemistry with emojis, and this lady, Nicola Gaston, she basically made the whole periodic table with emojis. I dare you to find francium in there, and yes, it's a little croissant. I think it's a very creative way to explain chemistry that is right in your phones. I have another talk about Perkin, and I started the talk just asking people to go to their phones and actually digging out one of particular emoji and trying to find that emoji in particular. Because emojis relate with people in a really interesting way. You can even talk about Scrabble and games. This was published 2 days ago by my friend Andy, who he does all these graphics called compound interest. He publishes these graphics in chemistry, and there was a discussion on Twitter somehow, I don't know how people got there, on which element would give you the most points in Scrabble. And this guy apparently had enough time. I think he just had a baby, so probably he was woken up in the middle of the night with nothing else to do. So he spent all this time adding the points for each element and making a ranking. And I found a graphic that is even better than this one, but I couldn't put it in the presentation on time. Some guy just got this graphic and made a freaking 3D model where the higher element is the one that ranks more points, and printed that and tweeted. So it's a nice way. Like, you can find all sorts of ways. And if you go to Andy's website, compoundchem.com, there's a million graphics on pH, organic chemistry, a lot of concepts. Now he's doing a lot of graphics with the Society of Chemistry on IYPT. So it's a very nice way to talk about chemistry as well. GIFs or GIFs, I think there's a whole fight. Is it like UK, US? Is it GIFs or GIFs? I don't know, whatever. So if you use moving images, videos, it's also a great opportunity to share content. In this case, I did this while I was working back at ICIQ. These guys basically published a catalyst that literally traveled around a chain of hydrocarbons, and I don't know, when the researcher was explaining all the paper to me, I could also think of that. I wasn't even listening to it. So I tweeted that, and I think it got some appreciation by the chemistry community that you share some of the research in a nice way. Of course, there's beers. I don't know if the video would work, but I have a nice video of one of the first times we tried to do Pint of Science in Spain, because I know it's a big thing in the UK, and now it's become a big thing in France. Actually, the lead of Pint of Science World is from Paris, I believe, right now, so I think it's become a bigger thing. But back 2 years ago, there was no events like that in Spain, and we kind of brought that from the UK. And I don't know if the video would work. If not, we can go to YouTube later and find it. No, it didn't work. Oh, come on. I'm here. No. Okay, whatever. Well, I mean, you can go online and see the video, but I mean, the point being that you can talk about science with beers And the main point is not alcoholism in this slide, although it makes it different. But the main point is that you need to talk about science at every moment you have. So if you don't need a special event, you don't need a magazine, you don't need a tweet. If you're with your friends and you want to tell them about your work, I know you think it's super complicated, but there's ways to tell them and to feel them, to make them feel related to what you're doing. And if you have a beer with them, it's a very nice way to, explain what you're doing. Get out there. There's tons of people that want content. I think content is the most difficult thing to get. So if you have a nice idea and you think someone could appreciate that idea and do something good with that idea, just put it out there, send an email. Cold emails work. I mean, I started a collaboration with CNN thanks to a cold email to BB, the editor-in-chief. So just go out there. If you want to do a little radio section or a podcast, go to a local radio. They'll be happy to do it. If you want to do like a YouTube video, get on a camera and start a YouTube video. I mean, you're gonna hear all about Rafael later. It's very easy to start doing things, and there's people there that do fantastic stuff. So just try things, and they may work. It's never too late. I mean, people think if you want to communicate, you need to be young, you need to be trained in social media, you need to use that every day. But I mean, this guy I found on the street yesterday, I don't know, he was going for a dinner or whatever, and I just went up to him like, hey, could we take a selfie together? I know you from Twitter. I know he has a freaking Nobel Prize, but I know him from Twitter. So it's never too late. Sir Fraser Stoddart got the Twitter account just after winning the Nobel Prize. I don't know how old he was when he got the Twitter account, but now he has thousands of followers. He's one of the main influencers in there, and people respect what he tweets. And I mean, if you are not out there, probably Twitter is already the past. So get Instagram, get TikTok, get something that's gonna get actual track in the next years. But if you want to be on Twitter, there's a fantastic chemistry community. We all tweet under the same hashtag, like RealTimeChem or ChemTwitter, and it's great to find people that know about your field and relate to you. And you'll get real impact. The studies that prove that if you have beyond, I know it sounds a bit difficult, but if you have beyond 1,000 followers on Twitter, which is not that crazy, I mean, imagine the people in this conference following you, that's fine. You start affecting on people that are beyond your community, your local community. You start getting to the media, because there may be one journalist among your followers. You start getting out to policymakers, because there may be a member of parliament among your followers. You start getting to decision makers, because I don't know, there may be one of your local politicians in there. So the more followers you have, the more likely you're to be retweeted. And I think there's a fantastic article in CNN as well about the silos on Twitter, and there's few people on Twitter that are really key. So if they retweet your message, you're gonna get out to the whole community. So I think it's very interesting, to see the impact that social media can have in the communication of your research. And actually, it was this is not a study; it's just a little experiment someone did. I know it's in Spanish, but I cannot translate in the text next to it. It was a guy that was saying, "I have a Twitter account with less than 2,500 followers. I went to a conference and I stood by my poster, and then I posted a picture of my poster. I had more, clicks on my poster online, 4,600, than attendees of the conference. And then, of course, got more interactions. There was at least 89 people that replied to the tweet and asked questions. And have you been to a poster session? How many people actually go and see your poster? Like 3 in an afternoon? 4? I don't know. So I think it's real impact, and you get real engagement out of social media if you got to do that. And again, it works. This is a study from a Spanish university. Okay, 5 minutes. So just 2 more slides. This is a study from a Spanish university that they proved once again that not only you get more citations, you get more people interested, but also companies get interested in your work. If you're out there in the newspapers, you're more likely to be seen by companies that may want to use your chemistry for their stuff. So in their study, 21% of researchers that took part in the study were contacted by companies afterwards. Be creative, explore and learn, try to listen to your heart and not to your brain, although, think before you tweet. just because it stays there forever. I mean, I know a certain president doesn't really care about that, but you know, think before, but you know, follow your heart, do whatever you like, and you know, you'll be learning on the way. If you need help, there's help out there. I mean, if you work in a real proper institution, you should have a press office. If not, they should have a press office somewhere in your country. If not, there's freelance science writers everywhere. You can find them on Twitter. You can email them, send them a message, say, hey, I have this paper. And I mean, basically the story in the Times and the paper by Victor and Federico work that way. They just email me, hey, could you help us kind of raise the profile of this paper? So try to reach to these people, tell them your story, and you may be able to get more citations, more views, and more readership. And again, I mean, when you love chemistry, when you love anything, you like to tell the world. So keep talking about that. Keep talking about what matters to you. Do crazy things for chemistry. Like these guys that came on their own from a little city in Spain to a IUPAC just to see this conference, and I spread the word on tungsten, which really shouldn't be called tungsten because it's wolfram, because that's the real name the Spanish discoverer used. I mean, do crazy things for chemistry, start doing activities on chemistry. If you like chemistry, sorry, a little bit of spam at the end. IUPAC is doing this great initiative called the Top 10 Emerging Technologies in Chemistry. They publish a e-paper that is open access. You can download it from there. If you go downstairs to the De Gruyter publishing house stand, they have free copies of it. And it's basically selecting technologies in chemistry that are between research and application in industry that will hopefully make it very soon, and they could help us achieve the SDGs from the United Nations. So I think this year there was flow chemistry, there was recycling plastics. So there's a lot of technologies that could help us, you know, be more sustainable, and we all think that chemistry is in the center of that. So if you want to check this initiative out, go to that website. I think in the next few months they're going to release the call for Top 10 Emerging Technologies 2019. So go to IUPAC's website. You know, if you think your field should be there for whatever reason, if you think like solar cells or, you know, electrocatalysis, whatever should be there, just teaching. Yeah, I mean, if you think teaching chemistry should probably be there, just submit your initiative and a panel of experts will select that, and then we'll select 10 for next year. And I think that's all. Hope it wasn't too long. And if you have any questions, I think it's more likely to find me on Twitter or email than actually around the conference, but feel free to come by or just drop me a text or whatever on Twitter, and I'm quite easy to reach. Thank you so much for the invitation again.